Years back, we discussed the weirdest ritual monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but as with how we did videos at the time, it was mainly us just looking at the art of old vanilla rituals that seemed inefficient and riffing on them. But in hindsight, an even more interesting era of rituals in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are those monsters that emerged right as rituals were getting effects. When the game needed more than just beat sticks, Konami regularly started giving standalone ritual monsters effects to give you a bigger bang for your buck since they required a spell, tribute, and the ritual monster itself to summon them. That being said, they were very mild with early ritual effects, so I want to look at some of the weirdest monsters from this growing pain era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Rituals that might not actually be that weird when we look at the context of when they were released. These are essentially the standalone rituals between the era of when they were almost all effectless, and the more modern era of rituals, where they all have archetypes, some of which broke the ways rituals worked so they could be meta. And of course, we'll still comment on the designs. So for that, I also have my co-host, Judgment Meter.
I am the ritual master.
Okay, what do you know about ritual monsters?
Blue card?
Correct. Now, let's search for the top 10 weirdest Yu-Gi-Oh! Ritual monsters that actually make sense. Number 10, Reshef the Dark Being. This monster has the effect where once per turn, you can discard a spell and take control of one of your opponent's monsters until the end of the turn. Nice ability. Monster stealing is an evergreen effect in Yu-Gi-Oh! I used to wonder why you could only discard a spell and not just any card, but maybe that was to add a bit of a hurdle to this already strong effect. However, what always baffled me about this card is not its real life effect, but rather, this guy was a final boss twice in Yu-Gi-Oh! Media, but I completely forgot about his existence since I don't think he was a regular monster in either appearance. One time was in Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monsters, a 12-episode anime spin-off, which I think is just an alternate timeline where the plot happens sometime during the original anime, and the monsters are all collected and summoned via capsules. During the final battle with main villain Alexander the Great, he summons and combines with Reshef, which is just him sitting in it like a giant mech with laser eyes. Capsule Monsters wasn't really good, but I do find it funny how insane it got in the final battle with characters putting armor on of their monsters. Like, I completely forgot that Reshef is technically a monster here. I just always viewed him as a thing that the final boss uses from outside the series. It's like if Guardian Sphinx was just Sphinx to me.
Oh, it looks like a turtle. I hope you know what you're doing, old man.
However, Reshef has an even bigger role in one of the Game Boy Advance games, Yu-Gi-Oh! Reshef of Destruction. This game's story is essentially a filler arc after Battle City, where the Egyptian god of war Reshef is revived, and he's looking to collect the Millennium items and Egyptian god cards. So in his final battle, where he's just the duelist, he has a whole lot of life points and stalls to summon the 3 Egyptian gods and steal your monsters with Change of Heart. And when turning him into a ritual for the card game, what was his theme? That's right, his effect steals your monsters just like Change of Heart. If they wanted him to be an even fuller reference to the game, I think he would need a life point gain effect to reference how he had 40,000 life points, and have something to support big monsters like the god cards, maybe counting as multiple tributes, but I get that he was released in 2005 and they couldn't go too crazy with multiple effects. Final note, in the video game, Reshef possessed Pegasus when he was exploring ancient ruins as he normally does, so on Reshef's ritual spell, it shows Pegasus discovering the tablet of Reshef that possessed him. That's a cool scene, and we can add it to the small group of cards that feature anime characters. Number 9, Venu, Bright Bird of Divinity. This card is on the borderline of the solo ritual monster era, coming out in 2017 as rituals were about to be more consistently supported as archetypes. This monster lets you change the level of a monster on the field to the same level of a monster in your hand, and it has the second effect where if another monster is tributed in the hand or on the field, you can add a monster in your graveyard back to your hand. The latter effect is mainly meant to support other ritual monsters, since they tend to get summoned via tributing from the hand, but the level manipulation effect is very interesting. Specific levels are very important for Synchro and Xyz plays, so it's possibly meant for that, but most archetypes that need level manipulation have those effects built into their own monsters, making this less likely of a candidate to show up in those decks, since it's still a one-off ritual monster. You tend to need 3 cards for a combo, plus another monster to use the level effect with. I could see them wanting to make Venu your one-stop shop for assisting with all these special summoning methods, but I can never figure out what deck could use it. An extra note is its ritual ritual spell Primal Cry has the effect where it can banish itself at the end phase to revive a ritual monster that was sent to the graveyard that turn. I assume this is a bonus effect for if you use ritual monsters to tribute for more ritual monsters, along with basic revival after being destroyed, but still, I feel there's a bigger purpose for this card that was either underbaked or it's just randomly going to be useful in a ritual archetype someday in the future. They could also just be doing this as a reference to Venu's inspiration, the Egyptian god Venu, who represents creation and rebirth, making the spell Rebirth for ritual monsters. So maybe I'm looking too deep into it. I mainly just like the bird design, so I've always wanted to find a deck that uses it.
Aw, this is a pretty bird. Oh, I like it. I don't usually like birds, or I don't have a particular affinity for birds. I feel like this would be in Magic Knight Rayearth. It's very magical and heavenly.
What would it do in Magic Knight Rayearth?
I don't know, just be like I don't know, maybe carry them somewhere, give them some power, and it would be like ginormous.
Huh. What do you think about its portrayal on its ritual spell Primal Cry?
Is it gonna be like a phoenix where it dies and then it becomes amazing?
It looks exactly the same when it revives itself. Yeah, I mean, you were kinda right.
I'm so smart. I'm so smart.
Number 8. Dark Master Zork, a ritual monster whose effect relies on a die roll mechanic with the potential to backfire. Sounds like a disaster on paper, but the effect makes sense considering the lore, and it's not terrible in a vacuum either.
Zork! Isn't that the guy from the show Yugioh?
Judge...
Yes, I heard it. I heard it as I was saying it.
To translate Judgment Meter talk, I think she meant to ask if he was the same as Zork Necrophades from the end of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime.
That's what I meant. I meant, isn't he in Bakura's deck? And isn't he the bad guy?
Well, he's not exactly the same Zork from the end of the series, but he is a Zork from a manga arc.
I remember him from the manga. Yeah, I read the Yu-Gi-Oh manga in Shonen Jump, the serialized manga thingy.
He's from the Dungeons & Dragons style game from the manga Monster World, to which Yami Bakura challenges Yugi and friends. Bakura's avatar is the master of this game, being Zork. You roll 2 10-sided die for numbers ranging from 0 to 99, and that affects the monsters you run into. If you roll 99, it's considered a critical fumble and you lose, but if Bakura rolls a 0, it's a super critical hit for Zork, also leading to failure. So with dice being involved in Zork's game, they found a way to put it in his ritual form, just with a standard 6-sided die. To reference the critical hit and fumble, 1 and 2 board wipe your opponent's monsters, since the lowest values were super critical in the game, and 6 destroys all of your monsters, since the highest value was the fumble in Monster World. And then 2, 3, and 4 destroy one of your opponent's monsters, so the effect is overall fine for 2003. 5 out of the 6 times you're hurting your opponent, but still, with the effect up to a game of chance, I feel you would mainly be using this guy for the badass factor, since this card looks sick. It's based on Takahashi's extra art in the manga, and as someone who had this card in real life, I can attest, the shine that they added to the green mist makes it a cool card for the collection.
Where are his nipples?
I never thought about that.
Is that inappropriate?
No, I just wasn't expecting you to observe him that way.
I can see him as being a very attractive man. Is that his crotch or his sword?
Once again, never really thought about looking at him that way.
I'm zooming in. Oh, excuse us one moment while we inspect his pants.
I think that's just the normal place to keep the sheath of his sword. He just has a really big sword.
I mean, he keeps it where it's most comfortable and safe to him, which is, I have nothing appropriate to say.
You know, now that you say it, I actually think the sword is just in his pants, or he's like a weird knife holder thing. Not as weird as the other Zork's dragon placement, but still.
Oh, he's the one with the giant dragon penis. Yeah, so he does have something in his pants.
One thing I've always wanted for this card is more fanfare around it. I feel it never got any attention when it was released or in retrospect. It was released in Dark Crisis in 2003, where it was overshadowed by other new boss monsters, like Vampire Lord, or the Archfiend Archetype, or Exodia Necros, the latter of which was not good, but it was the cover card. And with no attention on the original card, I'm surprised they never bothered to retrain him when Bakura's other cards got retrained, so it felt like it was irrelevant from the start. Though he's way too significant to be forgotten, he's definitely going to get a retrain someday. For a new effect, I assume you would be able to manipulate a die roll in some way so there's no more randomness. Maybe all the choices would be beneficial, or if if there is a negative effect like self-destruction, there would be a positive side to it, like letting him revive or search cards when he's destroyed. Regardless, the dice will still be there because Bakura loves his dice.
Wait, that other guy liked dice too.
They can both like dice, it's not an exclusivity thing.
Oh, what a trendsetter. I like Bakura even though he's evil.
Number 7, Shinato, King of a Higher Plane. This effect was pretty good for a card that came out in 2003, but the weird part is how they technically made it better in real life compared to its boss monster mode in the anime. Usually, early anime boss monsters had to be toned down when they came to the real life card game. We have a whole video on that. Its anime effect was, when it destroys a defense position monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you then cut your opponent's life points in half. While this is great for the early duels, sending them from 4,000 to 2,000 and so on, when you get to the later parts of the duel when your opponent only has like 400 life points left, they just lose 200, and then 100, and etc. You can't finish them off with this effect, so there's no lethal downside to just defending. It also had the bonus Deckmaster effect in the anime, where the user gains life points equal to what was burned off the opponent, but still, you're not finishing anyone off with this effect. When this card was printed in Dark Crisis, it still deals burn damage to your opponent after destroying a defense position monster, but now it inflicts damage equal to that monster's original attack. That is a much more efficient effect, like a prototype Flame Wingman. It can actually finish off an overly defensive opponent, where they might be better off summoning a monster in attack position just to avoid the burn damage. I'm interested to know why they chose this for the new effect, but they made it a formidable boss to build a niche deck around. As for a couple of other weird things about it, first off, I was confused about Shinato when I first saw it was a ritual when it came out in real life. In the anime, the main villain of the virtual world arc Noah used its ritual spell, Shinato's Arc, as his deck master, but it was portrayed as a monster, where when it was destroyed, it just released Shinato. So I assumed Shinato's Arc was going to be a monster when it came out, and it was going to have some bizarre effect where you can only bring out Shinato after summoning the Arc and fulfilling some crazy conditions, like Great Dazard needing to destroy monsters to upgrade into Fushio Richie. But no, Noah just used a spell card as a monster. And finally, I love Shinato's English name. In Japanese, it just translates to Shinato, King of Heaven. But English Yu-Gi-Oh was afraid of even the mildest reference to religion in the 2000s, so their generalized description of heaven was calling it a higher plane. And I don't know what it is, but calling him King of a higher plane feels like he's some sort of badass god higher than anything we could ever conceive. But that's just me.
I mean, I do really like angel-themed cards. You know who it looks like? Who's that card from Street Fighter? Who's that person from Street Fighter?
There's a lot of people from Street Fighter. I found out after 2 minutes of talking with her that she was referring to Seth, who ironically is not a person from Street Fighter. He's a synthetic robot thing from Street Fighter.
Yeah, it looks like Seth because of the knees.
So Shinato, he's a pretty cool guy. Looking forward to that retrain someday, since he was an anime boss and you know they gotta do it. Number 6, Litmus Doom Swordsman. I always thought this monster came out much earlier than it actually did, but that's likely because it was in the first season of the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime in 2005, and then took over 10 years to get printed in real life in 2018. The first season of GX liked to throw in some new rituals every now and then, since hey, remember that's a summoning method besides fusion. But after season 1, only Alexis, the sole ritual-focused duelist, got new rituals added to her Cyber Angel archetype. As a result, we had a couple of random ritual monsters sitting in purgatory for over a decade before being printed. In the anime, Bastion Misawa used Swordsman in one of his main duels in Season 1, and then in a background duel in Season 2, with its anime effect being, as long as there's a face-up trap card on the field, its attack and defense become 3,000. If not, it's just 0 all around. It also can't be destroyed by battle, and it's unaffected by traps. Nice little gimmick. I like the dichotomy in its stats with and without the trap. With a decade plus of waiting for it to be printed, Konami had a chance to update its anime effect for a more modern game, and when it came out, they made it slightly better. It still gains the 3,000 attack and defense and has battle protection and trap immunity, but they also added that if it's destroyed by your opponent's card, you can target one trap in either graveyard and set it to your back row. I've always liked being able to steal your opponent's cards, so it's a fun gimmick that I'll probably never use. They also added an extra effect to his ritual spell, Litmus Doom Ritual, where if it and the swordsman are in your graveyard, you can shuffle them back into the deck to draw a card. This didn't really correlate with any other archetypes, so it pretty much fit in with the old ritual monsters that you can't build a deck around, but I've always liked him for some reason. It's either because I like random anime cards, or it's because I have it in Royal Rare in Master Duel. Seriously, they made him a super rare card in that game. Even without the shine, I still think he has some unique visual flair. I like the half red, half blue background, and all the gold in his fancy pants. You gotta respect his creativity.
Who's this weirdo?
No judgment meter.
I'm sorry, was that offensive?
No, I just thought you'd be more on board with liking his design.
Oh, so he's a fancy man? Isn't there a series of cards that are all Doom named?
Not really. Yu-Gi-Oh! Localization used to rename any cards with death or devil in their name as Doom, so that's likely what you're thinking of. He was Litmus Devil Swordsman in Japanese. Though Devil was not really Bastion's theme, he was more about the elements.
Oh no, he's so mad. Poor Bastion. I think he's trying a little too hard.
Or maybe he's not trying hard enough.
That's up to you to that's for you to decide.
Number 5, Legendary Flame Lord. This monster adds a spell counter to himself every time you or your opponent activate a spell card. Then you can remove 3 counters from him to destroy all other cards on the field. Not a quick effect though. I feel this effect could go hard in a modern pendulum deck, and if this was just a standard main deck monster. But as a ritual monster in 2004, it's a bit slow. In an era where you could not consistently search out spell cards to load up on counters, you either had to rely on luck to draw them, or your opponent had to play them. Comparing it to another card from the time that utilized spell counters for its effect, Royal Magical Library, you could just summon it and potentially have 4 to 5 more spells in your hand, so it could work with enough draw spells in the right deck building. But rituals require too many resources. Doing the math, if you go second and you're lucky enough to draw the Lord, his ritual spell, and a monster to tribute to summon it, the last 3 cards in your hand have to be usable spells, and then you can control your destiny to get 3 spell counters and wipe the field right there. Otherwise, summon him, load up your protection, and maybe he'll have enough counters for the wipe next turn. As random as the counters seem, giving him the arbitrary spell counter mechanic does make sense when you consider that he was released in the set right after they introduced spell counters, so they were probably just trying to encourage that mechanic more. And there were a few cards that put spell counters on other cards, like Pitch Black Power Stone or that Mandragora Flip monster, so you didn't just have to rely on spell cards to get your counters. However, at the end of the day, it's the same story as other low-use cards. There is no real searchable strategy behind it. As for the ritual spell, Incandescent Ordeal, I like to imagine that this imagery is what it looks like when he clears the field, just a bunch of fire everywhere. Though it also reminds me of the art on Final Flame and the way he's yelling. Like, do we need to help him? Is he okay?
Hold on, I'm zooming. Okay, so I really enjoy that he isn't wearing pants and that you can see his upper thighs and his calves. And look, he's got some muscle tone going on in his arms. But his fingers are doing like something weird. Not totally sure about his outfit, but I like to see some leg. It's almost like you can see the underside of his butt cheek. You know what I mean?
That's just part of his cape, but I don't doubt that you would find that on a monster.
Leave it to me, right? Define an obscure butt cheek. I'm here for that.
Final note, this was the first ritual monster released that was fire attribute, so he may be forgettable today, but at least he holds a record. Number 4, Elemental Mistress Doriado. This was the only effect monster that made it onto my original weird ritual list, which was mostly my intrigue of it being a retrain of an old normal monster, Doriado, but I also think it deserves to be here since that effect is cool. With that effect being, its attribute is also treated as the 4 elemental attributes when face up on the field: earth, wind, fire, and water. I don't know, I always found that to be interesting. I feel you can do something with that, but I didn't know what when it came out. This card came out in the first GX set in 2005, which is the last eligible set of the main classic format of the game, GOAT format, so I turned to a lot of the early cards to see what works with it. The only strategy I've ever seen with her is with the trap Fa Rin Kazan. Neon, which needs you to have monsters with the 4 elemental attributes on your side of the field, so instead of having to get out 4 different monsters, she let you activate this trap right away by being all 4 attributes at once. This trap has 4 powerful effects, and you choose one. Either destroy all of your opponent's monsters, all of their back row, make them discard 2 cards randomly, or draw 2 cards. As cool as that is, once you do it, you still need to win. Doriato only had 1200 attack, so you're really just showing your opponent a neat trick, and then you need to actually summon some real offense, maybe a chaos monster. Regardless, I've always liked the concept of this ritual. I think it's because a retrain was not as common in 2005, so seeing a normal monster that was not in the anime get one felt special. And as a final note, in my original ritual list, we mentioned how this set off all the Doriato spin-off monsters. So in summary, we got Dark Doriato, Elemental Grace Doriato, and her counterpart, Shadow Priestess of Ohm.
Booger!
Hey, it's the Doriato segment. If you're gonna talk about one of the evil ones, at least talk about Dark Doriato.
This is a hot, dark mistress. She makes me think naughty things.
Do we need to request Judgment Meter X Dark Doriato fan art?
I'm not opposed to it.
Do you have any thoughts on the ritual Doriatos, since that's what the entry is supposed to be about?
She's so pretty. I love her. Doesn't she look so innocent and mystical? She pretty lady.
So who wins for you, Ritual Doriato or Dark Doriato?
I want them to make out.
I see, so we need to request another piece of fan art too. Number 3, Lycanthrope. This monster has the effect where when it inflicts battle damage to the opponent, you also inflict 200 burn damage to your opponent for each normal monster in your graveyard. I feel they were trying something here, but I have no idea what deck you could use this in. You would need a lot of normal monsters to make the effect damage worthwhile. Like 20 normal monsters in the graveyard, that's half your opponent's life points. But 3 in the graveyard, well, 600? I guess that's okay. Though I have speculation on why they made this effect to be used with normal monsters. This card came out in the same set as Advanced Ritual Art Strike of Neos in 2007, which ritual summons any ritual monster from your hand by letting you send normal monsters equal to their exact level from deck to graveyard. So I think they just wanted to make a gimmick ritual monster that benefits from the normal monsters that are now in your graveyard after using Advanced Ritual Art. Even so, you're usually only using 1 to 2 normal monsters at most with a standard ritual art strategy, so I don't know how you're blowing up your opponent with this monster. The funniest strategy I saw suggested to use with this card is use Heart of the Underdog, where in your draw phase, if you draw a normal monster, you can keep on drawing until you don't draw a normal monster, and then find a way to get all those normal monsters in the graveyard. I don't know how you're doing that, but it stuck out in my mind the most. That being said, forget the effect for a second. They're telling a story on this guy's ritual spell and have never elaborated on it. It's called Synthesis Spell, where we see this human being injected with werewolf science magic, and he transforms on the monster card. But he still has all the chords in him from the experiment, so I guess he's a cyberized werewolf now. What was the goal of this? Is he like the $6 million man but a werewolf? Is he good? Is he evil? Is this a reference to anything? The only thing I can think of is when Killer Instinct 2 gave Saberwolf cyber arms.
I was really excited that it was going to be a puppy woof woof, and then I saw some weird cables coming out of it, and he's drooling, and he's creepy.
So you wanted him to be...
just a regular werewolf.
Well, there's a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Werewolves, but if you want a less wiry one, knowing you, go for Silent Wolf Kalupo.
Oh my god, I love that. Oh my god. Oh, wow. Okay, now you're just turning me into a furry. Thanks, Mr. Top 10 List. Now everybody knows. You know, I like this card better than the wolf cyborg. This guy's more attractive.
So you got nothing else to say about the actual entry?
Who undid his pants?
Technically, he did when he got put in the synthesis spell.
Oh my goodness, good catch.
Number 2, Kukulon the Awakened. This monster's effect is once per turn. You can banish a normal monster in your graveyard, and he gains its attack until your next standby phase. Oh, a ritual monster with a normal monster effect, huh? You wouldn't have happened to come out in, yep, Strike of Neos, same set as Advanced Ritual Art. This pretty much confirms my theory with Lycanthrope, that Konami wanted to include some ritual monsters that have synergy with Advanced Ritual ritual art using normal monsters, though these were the only 2 rituals released in that set, so they still seem random in the grand history of ritual monsters. That being said, I like Kukulkan's effect better than Lycanthrope's in theory, since it relies on just needing 1 normal monster rather than a bunch, and as mentioned in the last entry, you're usually just using 1 or 2 with advanced ritual art, so that's much easier to get in the graveyard. However, to make this effect worthwhile, you would need a big normal monster in your graveyard since Kukulkan only has 500 attack points on default. With him being a level 4 monster, you would likely be using other level 4 monsters as tribute, and with level 4 normal monsters usually capping out around 2000 attack, he's basically a 2500 beat stick at most. Maybe you're playing other high attack normal monsters in your deck, but I don't really see this as a splashable card in something like a Blue Eyes deck to take advantage of that big attack stat. It's also worth noting that this monster is based on a warrior in Irish mythology of the same name, who's a super warrior descended from a god. I feel like a big mythological figure like this should have at least gotten a few other cards based around him, otherwise this reference feels too random and almost like a waste. If they ever retrain him, give him an archetype based around Irish folklore, similar to how other folklore got their own archetypes. Valkyries, Aesir, Noble Knights, Kukulkan has a lot of potential based on the source material.
I like that his hair is red, and his little tunic thingy is also red.
If you like the red on his clothes, then you'll love the red on his emblem ritual spell.
Is that like something he picked up at the mall?
No, it's his precious family heirloom that's too special to find at any old store.
You can get really special things at the mall.
For number 1, we chose a duo of monsters that feel like they were meant for something big, but ended up just being overshadowed by another duo of rituals. Number 1, Divine Grace Northwemco and Garlandolf, King of Destruction. As I just said, they're underwhelming counterparts that feel like they needed more notoriety. Northwemco has the effect where she can make herself indestructible by card effects by targeting other cards on the field up to the number of monsters used to summon her, and as long as they're face up, she's indestructible. And with her ritual spell, Ritual of Grace, you can banish it from the graveyard to make all rituals untargetable, meaning Northwemco. For Garlandolf, when he's summoned, you destroy all monsters on the field with defense less than his attack value, being 2500, and he gains 100 attack points for each destroyed monster. Wow. And with his ritual spell, Ritual of Destruction, you can banish it from the graveyard, and any monster destroyed in battle by a ritual monster gets sent to the top of the deck instead of the graveyard. These effects were fine, with Northwemco even having a jank build for older formats, but there were always a few things that struck me as weird about these counterparts. First off, they felt like knockoff versions of Demise and Ruin. Those were both ritual monsters that we discussed on our Forgotten Counterparts list, and I'd say they were the first meta ritual deck. Maybe Relinquished counts first, but I usually say it's these guys. In short, Demise could pay 2000 life points to board wipe everything else, and then you could one turn kill your opponent with the right support cards now that they have nothing to protect themselves with. And Ruin, well, she was not really involved, but since they were counterparts, she always got support alongside Demise because they're partners. Ruin could attack twice, which I always thought was neat. As for the topic of this entry, Garlandolf was dark and had an effect that destroys just like Demise, though it was worse since it relied on your opponent having specific monsters, while Demise destroyed regardless. And Northwemco did not have a similar effect to Ruin, but they were both light attribute and were ladies with cool staffs.
She's so pretty, I like her. Such a fancy lady. Seems like she has very important magical business to attend to. I love her outfit.
What do you think of the face on her staff?
I have a strange feeling that it comes to life and talks. When I say talks, I mean yells obscenities.
Ooh, what does it say?
What obscenities? I don't know.
While we're on this, what do you think about Garlandolf?
Whoa. I'm sure somebody's attracted to this guy.
Is it you?
Who told you? Oh my goodness. What does this guy do?
Destroys?
Sure.
The big difference lore-wise with these two duos is Demise and Ruin were partners in crime, while these two were opposing entities, which leads to my next point about them. If they're enemies, why don't they ever interact? No cards show their interaction. All we have are their ritual spells, their monster cards, and Northwemco appears on an unrelated card. Why not expand the lore by showing them destroying and protecting the world? Show their their fight or the aftermath. Doesn't even have to be on their own support cards, you can just put them on a random ritual spell that supports rituals. Demise and Ruin showed the various ways the world ended with them, so why not these two? Demise and Ruin were also forward-thinking enough to have a combined ritual spell that summons either of them in 2006, while these two had individual ritual spells, making them harder to play in the same deck since you would have more bricks, and they were released in 2008. Why not give them a combined ritual spell? I get that the spells had extra effects, but you could have just had a combined ritual spell with clauses that activate depending on which one you summon. Like it says, if you summon North Wemco, no targeting. If you summon Garlandolf, battle effect. Also to note, North Wemco's Japanese name translates to Beautiful Goddess of Salvation North Wemco, which is a much better name to reflect how she's the opposite of Garlandolf being destruction. Though why does she get a hyphen and Garlandolf gets a comma? I really feel they fumbled this new ritual duo, where it got no further support or retrains. I think they deserved better. As mentioned though, North Wemco did have a deck using the Djinn monsters, which give you effects if you use them for ritual tributes. The strategy was, you use the releaser Djinn, which prevents your opponent from special summoning when the ritual monster she was used with is on the field, and then you make North Wemco untargetable with her own spell, so your opponent is locked out of special summoning and it's hard to get rid of North Wemco. Though once the cards that she targets are off the field, she's free to destroy. And if there are effects that remove cards from the field without targeting, she is also done, and you can just run over her in battle, so no idea how good this was. Regardless, for having effects with potential that seemed like they were overshadowed by rituals from 2 years before them, North Wemco and Garlandorf are the enemies that teamed up for number 1 on this list. Now, what did you think? Were all these rituals sufficiently weird while still making sense, or were they too far gone in one direction to save? And what are some of your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh rituals from this time frame, whether we discussed them or not? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.